They used to erase me with polite laughter. Tonight, I learned that silence cuts sharper than any insult. June 10th, 2023, 5:30 p.m. The backyard glowed. String lights between trees, the grill sighing, glasses chiming. Sophia moved with poise. Father's pride tracked her. Mother steered talk toward praise. Aunt Rose sat by the hydrangeas. Sophia took the spotlight. I worked the ropes in black. Mother's refrain lay on my shoulders. Keep quiet for peace. Peace came thin, brittle, spotless, and I learned how to be overlooked. I keep a ledger. No one sees the birthday missed for an exam and the cake already cut. The day my posting was confirmed and a hush spread. A winter drive back to DC while Sophia texted beaches. Little lines, little dates, balance carried forward. Sophia lifted her chin and began tonight's case study, a multi-million listing above Ask a Buyer Who Knew Quality, a rooftop closing toasting the skyline. Applause drifted. I waited for a gap I could cross. I contributed to a NATO assessment this quarter, I said. Telemetry anomalies challenging, but speaking of challenges. Father cut in, already turned back to Sophia. Tell them about that inspection mix-up. Brilliant how you handled it. Laughter reset the room. My words dissolved. A woman asked if I enjoyed all that filing. Harm isn't required to make a wound. The ledger added another line. I remembered a party 2 years ago when Sophia introduced me to brokers with a chuckle. My sister works in DC. So many rules, so many briefcases. She hooked her arm through mine, told them I was some kind of analyst, then whispered, "Be a dear and fetch us some ice." That night I fetched the ice. Tonight I passed the bowl without standing. The sun slid lower. Sophia tapped her glass with a butter knife, a bright, brittle note that gathers people like string gathers kites. She smiled toward me, stage light, not sister light, then faced the crowd and offered the line they didn't know they wanted. To Claire, still stuck in that dead-end uniform job. Guests chuckle. Claire stays silent. My silence had weight. It pressed my tongue until words flattened beneath it. Mother's smile flickered. Father exhaled through his nose. I let the moment bloom and die. The ledger shut on tonight's page with a click only I could hear. A cicada started slowly. Charcoal thickened the air. The ice bucket sweated. A star pushed through pale sky. Smallness once felt like safety. Tonight it felt like misreading a costume they preferred me to wear. By staying quiet, I sharpened the blade they mistook for surrender. My phone buzzes in my pocket, a secure alert. My gaze hardens. Some calls can't be ignored. Every insult was another line in the invisible book I carried. Tonight they filled its final page. The party thickened into night. String lights trembled. Smoke lifted from the grill. Chatter rose until it felt like a roof of noise. More noise. I held my glass by the stem, letting the chill steady my pulse. Sophia basked, bright, magnetic, collecting congratulations like dividends. Aunt Rose hovered at the edge, lips folded. Once she had whispered, "One day they'll see." "It's all relationships," Sophia told a guest. "Know the room, win the room." The guest nodded as if she'd paid tuition for the line. I tried to enter without scraping anyone's pride. "I've been working a telemetry thread." I said, a systems anomaly that probably just carrying suitcases for politicians. Sophia sang quick as a parry. Laughter clicked on like a switch. I set my glass down. The ring kissed the cloth. "I wasn't," I began. "Not now, Claire. Don't spoil the evening." Mother did not lift her voice, only her palm, as if stilling traffic velvet over steel. The ledger inside me took the new line with a quiet hand. She means well, I thought. And meaning well can bruise where it cannot be seen. The secure phone vibrated in my pocket, one short, two long, the pattern that tightens everything non-essential out of the frame. I didn't look yet. I watched the citronella flame lean and recover. I let my breath mirror it until the din moved at my speed. Sophia turned to a new anecdote, a client who wanted to be seen buying rather than simply to own. Father chuckled and refilled her wine. Your knack under pressure? He said, astonishing. He didn't look at me. I didn't ask him to. I could explain what I do. I tried careful. It isn't filing, it's… If the briefcase is heavy… Sophia smiled. That still counts as a workout, right? The laugh had a warmer current and lifted the table an inch. I stayed seated. That too is a choice. The phone shivered again. Ghosting light through fabric-encrypted banner priority tag urgency blue. I shifted so the glow died and let my face settle into neutral, the expression no one here had learned to read. Aunt Rose saw the stiff arc of my fingers around the stem and said nothing. Silence is our second language. Sophia leaned in, voice bright enough to burn. Face it, Claire. Your uniform is nothing but decoration. Laughter erupted, some polite, some hungry, all of it heavy. I didn't flinch. I looked past the hedge toward the street, quiet, ordinary, a ribbon of dark waiting to glint. My face gave them nothing. Inside the book turned. The line found its margin. Music pressed forward. Pricier wine opened. Someone retold a joke that survives only by repetition. The moment that should have bent me passed and left a clean edge behind. I set my glass down, centered the wobbly chair leg with my shoe, and felt something assemble, patience into resolve, resolve into action, action into calm. I whisper to myself, almost a vow, if they want a spectacle, they'll get one. The faint sound of distant sirens begins to blend with the music. They thought their laughter ended the night. In truth, it was only my beginning. Dawn cracked open, pale and narrow, across Arlington, washing the walls of my apartment, in a gray light that revealed every crease of paper, every fingerprint on the glass desk. Where Whitmore Gardens had glimmered with string lights and laughter, here the air hummed with a colder rhythm, screens blinking with secure channels, folders stacked in precise order, maps marked with red threads crossing oceans. It was not luxury. It was purpose distilled. Their voices still rang in my head. Sophia's line, "Your uniform is just decoration," slipped through memory like a wire tightening each time it passed. But the uniform was not fabric. It was history-weight blood stitched into seams. Every metal had been hammered by consequence. I vowed silently that she would learn what it meant. The secure console blinked, pulling me forward. Colonel Hayes had sent an encrypted package file, designator 7HV flagged urgent. I keyed in the code. Lines of numbers resolved into something sharper: correspondence between a defense contractor already under investigation and a shell company tied unmistakably to Sophia's firm. Payments routed with surgical precision, invoices stamped with false dates. On the surface, a glittering real estate deal. Beneath, money with fingerprints too heavy to hide. The ledger on my desk lay open. Every insult, every dismissal had already filled its earlier pages, but this was a different kind of entry. I wrote in neat letters, debt of silence about to be paid. The door clicked. I tensed, then saw Aunt Rose slip in, her shoulders hunched as though even the hall might overhear her. She clutched a folded letter, hands trembling. "I shouldn't have waited this long," she whispered, closing the door behind her. Her eyes scanned the cluttered room with something like relief, as though my discipline gave her permission to speak. "What is it?" My voice was calm, practiced. She placed the letter down, careful as though it might bite. Years ago, dinners, conversations, I heard Sophia promise favors to a councilman. At first, I told myself it was just business. But then I found this. She tapped the envelope. I've kept it hidden, afraid of the family turning on me. Afraid of silence. But I can't carry it anymore. I opened the letter. Handwriting sprawled across old stationery notes of meetings, names, figures. The kind of careless evidence left when arrogance believes it will never be challenged. I met Rose's eyes. She looked smaller, older, worn by regret. "You were never blind," I told her. "Just muted. They taught us that silence keeps peace, but silence only fattens cruelty. She nodded, tears shining but unshed. Then, don't do what I did. Don't wait. After she left, the apartment seemed sharper, as if her confession had scoured away the last veil. I turned back to the console. Another message from Hayes. We'll have one shot. The timing must be perfect. I typed back, I'll be ready. But readiness was not enough. I scanned financial records until my eyes blurred, searching for the seam, and then I saw it. A transfer marked under an unrelated vendor, a date aligning with one of Sophia's headline-grabbing projects. I dug deeper. The vendor did not exist beyond a nameplate office. The money looped through 3 shells, then landed squarely in Sophia's empire. It was more than negligence. It was design. Proof that could break her. Proof she had crafted the rope herself. I sat back, breathing slow, each inhale steadying the tremor in my fingers. The map on the wall, dotted with marks of conflict zones, seemed to lean toward me, reminding me that discipline wins wars, not fury. The night's humiliation no longer stung. It fueled. They thought laughter ended the matter. They were wrong. I looked at the ledger, then at the file, then at the dawn cutting sharper lines across the desk. My voice barely touched the air, but it was enough to seal the vow. She handed me the rope. Now I'll let her hang herself with it. If you don't want to miss the moment when the rope finally tightens, hit subscribe and stay with me for the next chapter. Every mask cracks under pressure. I only had to provide the weight. The ballroom of the Grand Washington Hotel gleamed with polished marble and crystal chandeliers, but beneath the glitter, nerves twitched. Whitmore Enterprises' annual meeting had always been Sophia's stage, a theater where she dazzled investors with her bravado. Tonight, she strode to the podium in a gown that shimmered, expecting to perform yet another flawless act. Cameras lined the doors, reporters poised like hawks. Edward and Margaret sat in the front posture, stiff, convinced their elder daughter would again bend the room to her will. I sat further back, my uniform pressed to perfection, every ribbon in place. The polished brass buttons caught the light, but I felt the weight of silence more than the sparkle of ceremony. Aunt Rose, quiet in her seat, gave me a faint nod. She carried the knowledge of years buried under politeness. Tonight, that silence would finally serve a purpose. Sophia began with her trademark flourish. Expansion into Dubai, record profits in Europe, she proclaimed. Slides flashed, graphs, numbers soaring upward. Investors clapped on cue. Her confidence filled the room like perfume, sweet but suffocating. Whispers about fraud had been circling for months, but she laughed them off. Rumors, she said, dismissive. Jealous competitors. Heads nodded. Cameras clicked. I rose. The scrape of my chair cut across the applause. My steps carried me to the aisle, each measured as if on parade. Shall we discuss these transfers? My voice carried without strain. I held up a remote. The screen behind Sophia shifted. Rows of figures appeared, financial transfers, dates, shell companies. The board stirred. Investors leaned forward. Murmurs spread like sparks in dry grass. Sophia's eyes narrowed. She's lying, she snapped. She's always been jealous. Her words cracked like a whip, but they landed weak. The evidence glowed on the screen, cold and undeniable. I advanced another slide. These payments authorized by this signature. The projector magnified her scrawl, looping and familiar. A gasp rolled through the hall. Reporters surged, shutters flashing. She stepped from the podium, her voice rising. This is a smear. She's fabricating. Her face blanched as I raised a folder. Corroborated by Colonel Hayes, I said, and by Aunt Rose, who overheard your arrangement with Councilman Porter. All eyes turned to Rose. She stood slowly, trembling, but resolute. It's true, she said, voice barely above a whisper, yet amplified by the silence around it. The weight of years of quiet now broke in a single sentence. The board shifted, their faces pale. Edward's jaw tightened. Margaret clutched her pearls. Their golden child's mask had cracked fragments slipping into the light. Sophia's defiance faltered. She looked at me not with scorn, but with sudden dawning fear. The room froze as I revealed the final slide, her direct authorization, the keystone of the scheme. It hung in the air, undeniable, immutable. Investors recoiled, reporters shouted questions, cameras burst in flashes. Her empire, once untouchable, now teetered on the brink. I did not need to raise my voice. The truth spoke louder than I ever could. The chandelier light fractured across the crystal glasses as if the room itself bore witness. A low hum of panic stirred in the corners where investors whispered their certainty eroding. Reporters leaned so far forward their badges swung against their chests, eager to capture the downfall they had only dared to speculate about. Even the waitstaff froze, trays trembling in their hands. Every second stretched, every breath magnified, as though history itself paused to watch Sophia's empire unravel. I leaned into the microphone. For years you mocked my silence. Tonight it speaks louder than you ever will. They once called me the forgotten daughter. That night the silence crowned me instead. The courthouse steps radiated the heavy breath of July marble glowing under floodlights as the evening fell. Reporters packed the square, cameras raised like weapons, their flashes striking against the columns. The hearing had been swift and merciless. Sophia Whitmore, celebrated unstoppable, invincible in the family's eyes, was declared guilty of fraud, her empire frozen and her name dissolved into disgrace. For all her boasts, she now stood as a hollow figure, wrists bound in steel, escorted into the glare. I stood at the base of the stairs, not hidden in shadows this time, but visible to all. The tide of people pressed forward, their shouts rising above the cicadas that hummed in the summer air. Major Whitmore, any comment? Do you have words for your sister's fall? The microphones lunged toward me, each question demanding I perform, speak, condemn. But after a lifetime of being erased, I had learned the sharpest answer needed no sound. My hand rose to my chest. I unclipped the metal brass warm against my palm and lifted it high into the blaze of lights. The crowd hushed as if the gesture itself demanded reverence. The silence spread like fire on dry grass, one camera click, then another, then stillness wrapping the steps. For years their laughter had cut me, their dismissals bruised me. Tonight their silence acknowledged me. Sophia emerged next, flanked by marshals forced to pass only feet away. Her defiance fractured as her eyes caught mine. She searched for the stage she once commanded, for the audience she could bend. Instead, she found nothing. No applause. No rescue. She turned her gaze aside, shackled, diminished. The irony was complete. She had always claimed my silence meant weakness, yet it had outlasted every word she ever shouted. Behind her, Edward and Margaret drifted from the courtroom, no longer statues of pride, but shadows of collapse. Their silence was different now, not dismissive, not cruel, but hollow, emptied by a truth too large to deny. The empire they raised on arrogance crumbled in front of cameras, and still they said nothing. Among the crowd stood Aunt Rose, tears catching the light. She pressed her hand to her heart, pride soft, yet unmistakable. For decades she had carried her silence as shame. Tonight it became absolution. I met her eyes, and for the first time family did not feel like a burden. The evening air smelled of cut grass and asphalt, tense with history. Veterans lifted their hands in quiet salute. Strangers bowed their heads. Flashbulbs burned, capturing not scandal, but proof. Sophia disappeared into the waiting car door, slamming like the final stroke of judgment. I clipped the metal back to my chest, fastening it firm. I did not need to raise my voice. The silence was enough to crown me. My story did not end with applause. It ended with silence. And silence was enough. When you have walked with me through every slight, every wound disguised as laughter, I hope you see that silence was never weakness. It was my shield, my ledger, my justice. I ask you now if this story reached you. Leave your words for me. Tell me what you saw in my fight because your voices are the echo my silence once lacked. And carry this with you in your own battles, don't rush to shout over the noise. Sometimes the quietest stand, the refusal to bend is the loudest victory. Silence held with dignity can crown you too.